The church bells were still ringing in my ears when my daughter Olivia looked at me with unfamiliar coldness and said, "I think it's best if you don't come to the wedding." Just like that, I was erased from the most important day of her life, because her future mother-in-law found me inconvenient. What Olivia didn't know was that I had already paid the $45,000 deposit for the venue she had dreamed of since she was 16. I had quietly built her perfect day from the shadows. 26 years of love, sacrifice, and sleepless nights reduced to unnecessary tension. And in that moment, I realized, my daughter had never really seen me. Before we dive back in, let us know where you're tuning in from. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow, I've got something even more special lined up just for you. The church bells were still echoing in my ears when Clara told me I wasn't welcome at her wedding anymore. My own daughter. The girl I had raised alone for 20 years now stared at me with the hollow calm of a stranger. "Mom, I think it's best if you don't come," she said, coolly stirring her latte. "Vivian thinks your presence would cause unnecessary tension. And honestly, I agree." Just like that, I was dismissed from the most important day of her life. Not by her hand, but because her future mother-in-law didn't think I fit. Clara had no idea that I'd already paid the $45,000 deposit for the venue, the lakefront estate she dreamed of since she was 16. Silently, I'd funded her perfect day. And now I wasn't even allowed to witness it. 26 years of bedtime stories, spelling bees, scraped knees, and tearful teenage nights, reduced to unnecessary tension. That was the moment I realized, my daughter had become someone I no longer recognized. Or perhaps, someone who had never truly seen me in the first place. I was 32 when Clara was born. My miracle baby after years of failed fertility treatments. Her father, Robert, and I were on the brink of giving up when those two pink lines appeared. I still remember the weight of her in my arms for the first time, dark curls plastered to her damp head, eyes blinking up at me like she'd already known me forever. "She knows you're her mom," the nurse had said. In that moment, I made a vow. I would give her everything. When Clara was 6, Robert left us for his 24-year-old secretary. The divorce was messy, painful, but I was determined not to let her suffer because of it. I picked up extra accounting projects, worked nights and weekends, and made sure we never had to move from our home in Brookhill. She kept her friends, her school, her rhythm. I carried the weight. Robert's child support checks came sporadically before stopping altogether when he started a new family out in California. "Why can't I have the new American Girl doll like Lily does?" Clara would ask. And I'd smile. "We're saving for something even more special." Then I'd stay up late, crunching numbers, figuring out how many hours I needed to pick up to afford that doll by her birthday. That was our pattern. She asked, I found a way. The night she got into Cornell University, she sprinted into the kitchen waving her acceptance letter. "Mom, I got in," she squealed. I hugged her so tightly my arms ached. Inside, I was already calculating. Ivy League tuition meant liquidating what little retirement fund I had and taking out a second mortgage. "How are we going to afford this?" she asked that night. "Don't worry about it," I said, brushing her hair back from her face. "I've been saving since the day you were born." It wasn't entirely true. I'd saved what I could. But most of it came from sacrifice. Longer hours, fewer meals out, and a second mortgage I didn't tell her about. I was working 60-hour weeks at Turner & Company by the time she finished her first semester. My colleague, Graham Turner, caught me yawning over lunch one day. "You all right, Margot? Just burning the midnight oil." "Margot," he said gently. "You've been burning it for 20 years. After graduation, Clara moved to New York for a marketing internship that barely covered her rent. "Mom, I can't make rent this month," became a regular call. And each time, I tightened my own budget and transferred the money. "You need to stop bailing her out," my sister Nora said over Sunday coffee. "She's got to learn to stand on her own." "It's just until she gets on her feet," I told her. "You've been saying that for 2 years." But I didn't know how to stop. Supporting Clara was woven into my DNA. 3 years ago, she met Ethan Caldwell at a charity gala. Everything changed. The calls for money stopped. She was being courted by a tall, well-dressed finance manager from Old Money, Connecticut. Clara became different. More polished, more filtered. When she brought him home for Thanksgiving, I noticed how often she looked to him for approval. On her outfit, her opinions, everything. "Ethan thinks I should go into corporate marketing," she said while drying dishes. "What do you think?" She blinked at me. Well, he would know, wouldn't he? His family's connected everywhere. Gone was the fiercely independent girl who once said she'd never let a man dictate her future. But she was happy. Or at least, she looked it. So I said nothing. A year later, she called me from a yacht off the Amalfi Coast. "Mom, I'm engaged. Ethan proposed at sunset. The ring is incredible. 3 carats, emerald cut, diamonds all around. Vivian helped him choose it." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, forcing my voice to stay light. "We're thinking spring, at Lakehurst Manor." Of course. The estate she'd clipped from bridal magazines as a teenager. I remembered her once saying, "When I get married, it's going to be there." What she didn't know was that her dream would come true, not because of Vivian's social standing, but because I was about to take on more clients, spend sleepless nights with spreadsheets, and empty the last of my savings. The next day, I drove to Lakehurst. The booking manager, Lauren Bennett, was graceful but firm. "We're fully booked for spring." But I was told Vivian Caldwell had connections. Lauren's polite smile twitched. "Yes." Mrs. Caldwell inquired. "We do occasionally shift our schedule for the right circumstances." I knew what she meant. Money. And it wasn't long before she gave me the number. $85,000. Non-refundable deposit of $45,000. That night, I stared at my calculator in the dim kitchen light. I had just enough, if I drained my savings, tapped into my mother's inheritance, and took on another major client. 3 days later, I handed Lauren the check. "Mrs. Reese," she said, surprised. "I thought the Caldwell family was handling this." "It's a gift," I said. "For Clara. But I'd prefer if she didn't know. I want it to be a surprise." "Of course," she smiled. "We're very discreet." I drove home that evening feeling, for the first time in years, enough. Not rich. Not well connected. But enough. Clara would have her dream day. Because of me. But what I didn't realize was that this gesture, my grand, secret gift, would spark the most painful unraveling of our relationship. And eventually, it would bring me back to myself. The official wedding announcement arrived 2 weeks later. A thick cream envelope sealed with gold foil, my daughter's new name-to-be, Clara Caldwell, embossed across the front. But what struck me wasn't the calligraphy. It was the fine print. Hosted by Mr. and Mrs. Charles and Vivian Caldwell. Lakehurst Manor, Saturday, May 14th. No mention of me. No, Margot Reese cordially invites you. Just silence where my presence should have been. I stared at the card for a long time, the gold edges blurring as tears welled. I'd paid for the venue. Every cent. And still, I was invisible. Nora was livid when I told her. "They didn't even credit you? After you paid for that castle on a lake fantasy? Are you out of your mind, Margot?" "I didn't do it for credit," I murmured. "Well, clearly, because no one's giving you any." She was right, of course. I had quietly erased myself from the picture, thinking it would bring us closer. But instead of gratitude, I got exclusion. The final blow came 2 weeks later when Clara showed up unannounced at my office. "Margot," my assistant Jenny said, poking her head in. "There's someone here to see you. She says it's important." I knew before she said the name. Clara swept into the room like a department store mannequin. Polished, poised, perfume just right. But her eyes were red-rimmed and her smile wobbled. "You didn't answer my calls," she said. I've been busy, I replied, gesturing to the chair. Please, sit. She didn't. She crossed her arms, her voice clipped. Too busy for your own daughter? Too busy being disinvited from my own daughter's wedding, I said calmly. That's not fair. No, Clara. What's not fair is funding your fantasy wedding and being told I'm an embarrassment. I never said that. You didn't have to. You let Vivian decide I wasn't fit to be seen. And you agreed. She sank into the chair, her voice smaller now. Everything's falling apart, Mom. Lakehurst was perfect. The new place, Pine Hill Resort, is fine, but it's not the same. Diane. She caught herself. Vivian is furious because there's some charity gala the same weekend, and now half her guests have conflicts. The florist backed out. It's a disaster. I'm sorry to hear that. And I was. But not sorry enough to bail her out again. These, I said, gesturing vaguely toward the chaos she described, are the natural consequences of the choices you made when you decided I wasn't welcome. Her eyes welled again. I didn't mean it like that. Then what did you mean, Clara? Because, I think it's best if you don't come, is pretty unambiguous. She stared at the floor. I just wanted everything to be perfect. No, you wanted to look perfect. And Vivian told you I didn't fit the picture. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. That night, after she left, I sat in the quiet of my home and made a decision. I called Thomas Vance, the bank manager I'd worked with for years. Thomas, I said, I'd like to schedule a meeting about refinancing my house. It's time. With the partnership offer from Graham Turner finally formalized, I was looking at a significant salary increase and profit sharing. That second mortgage, the one I took out to pay for Clara's Ivy League tuition, could finally be consolidated and reduced. I'd spent years quietly sacrificing my financial health for Clara's stability. But no more. That night, I slept more deeply than I had in months. The next day brought another surprise. I was sorting through old clothes for donation when the doorbell rang. Expecting Nora or a package, I opened it to find Ethan Caldwell standing there, hands in his khaki pockets, awkward and unsure. Mrs. Reese, he said. May I come in? Ethan and I had never really spoken beyond pleasantries at holidays. But I stepped aside. Can I offer you something to drink? Coffee? Water? No, thank you. I won't stay long. He perched on the edge of my couch like a student meeting the principal. I wanted to apologize, he began. Clara told me everything, about what happened, about your paying for Lakehurst, about being told not to come. I had no idea. I narrowed my eyes. Vivian didn't discuss it with you? He winced. My mother tends to manage things. And Clara didn't tell you until now? He shook his head. Not until yesterday. After she saw you. He looked genuinely pained. I told her it was wrong. I even called off the engagement. That, I did not expect. You what? I told her I couldn't marry someone who treated her own mother that way. Who let my mother control everything. I leaned back, processing. And now? She wants to start over. She's postponed the wedding. Wants you involved. Wants to rebuild. I didn't respond right away. And what do you want, Ethan? He blinked. I want the woman I fell in love with. Not the one trying to be a replica of my mother. I studied him carefully. He seemed sincere. But I'd learned not to be swayed by desperate words. I appreciate you coming, I said at last. But my position hasn't changed. I won't be invited in as an afterthought. And I won't pay for a wedding where I'm only welcome by convenience. He nodded. Understood. Thank you for hearing me out. After he left, I sat in the silence of my home and repeated the words to myself. I won't be an afterthought. The following week, I redecorated my office. Out went the dusty box of Clara's school awards. In came a standing easel and a new canvas. I returned to art class at the Pine Ridge Creative Corner, the first time I'd held a paintbrush since Clara was in kindergarten. "I didn't know you painted," said Madeline Quinn, the instructor. "Neither did I smiled. I joined Madeline and a few of the women for drinks afterward: June, a retired teacher; Rachel, a nurse with a dry sense of humor; and Helen, a widowed therapist. "I just needed something for me," I said when they asked why I returned to painting. "I forgot who I was for a long time." They nodded like they understood. On Thursday night, we met again for dinner at the Lakeside Bistro. We were halfway through dessert when the door opened, and in swept Vivian Caldwell, trailed by two women from the Harbor View Social Club. She didn't see me at first. But when her gaze finally locked on mine, her lips twisted. She crossed the restaurant like a general about to confront a mutinous soldier. "Margot," she said with icy sweetness. "What a surprise to see you out." I forced a polite smile. "Vivian, I'd assumed you'd be home counting the money you saved by sabotaging your daughter's wedding." My friends froze. I stood slowly. "Vivian, this isn't the place." "Oh, it never is it? When you manipulate your daughter into calling off her wedding, I'd say the public deserves to know the kind of woman you are." I was about to respond when Madeline rose beside me. "I don't believe we've met," she said, voice pleasant and sharp. "But you just made it very clear who you are." Vivian blinked. "Excuse me." "You're excused," said Rachel, standing as well. "Come on, Vivian," said June. "There's nothing to see here, except a group of women enjoying their evening. Maybe take the hint." Vivian's face turned scarlet. With a final glare, she turned and stalked back to her table. Madeline turned to me. "Next time someone attacks you in public," she said, "we expect popcorn first." I laughed. Really laughed. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like Clara's mother. I felt like Margot, woman, artist, friend, whole. Tuesday morning came with a burst of spring sunlight and a fresh energy humming in my veins. The conference room at Hartman & Turner had been transformed: white linens, platters of fruit and pastries, a cake that read, "Congratulations, partner," in swirls of dark chocolate script. I stood in the hallway for a moment before stepping in, taking it all in like a guest at my own celebration. For 2 decades, I'd poured myself into this firm. I had stayed late, covered for others, built client relationships from scratch, and turned around portfolios no one else would touch. Today I was being made partner. Not because of politics, favors, or family connections, but because I'd earned it. Jonathan Hartman, my longtime mentor and the firm's co-founder, raised his champagne glass as I walked in. "To Margot," he said, "whose dedication, sharp mind, and steadiness have guided more clients than we can count." It's time her name joined ours on the door. The room erupted in applause. I accepted the framed partnership certificate with trembling hands and blinking eyes. From the back of the room, Nora gave me a double thumbs up, grinning like a proud parent. After the toasts and photos, I moved among the guests, colleagues, clients, and a few friends. Even Harold Vance from the bank was there, sipping mineral water and congratulating me. "We'll finalize the refinancing paperwork next week," he said. "You're in excellent shape, Margot. Just imagine, in a few years, you'll be debt-free and running the place." "Thank you, Harold," I said. "This feels like the start of something new." And it did. Not just a promotion, but a reclamation. We were slicing the cake when Jenny, my assistant, appeared in the doorway, her face uneasy. "There's someone out front asking to speak with you," she said quietly. I followed her into the hallway and froze. Clara stood there in a tailored navy dress, holding an envelope and looking like a wind-blown version of herself, still elegant, but visibly frayed. "Clara, this isn't a good time," I said gently. "I know. I'm sorry. But I couldn't wait." She extended the envelope. I recognized her handwriting, slanted and deliberate. "We postponed the wedding," she said. "Brandon and I. Officially. These are the notices." I took the envelope but didn't open it. "Why now?" I asked. She bit her lip. Because we need to figure out who we are, apart from everyone else's expectations. Especially mine. I stayed silent. There's more, she added. Vivian is telling people it's your fault. That you manipulated me. That you. I held up a hand. Let me guess. Jealous, controlling, overbearing. She swallowed. Yes. I'm sorry you're dealing with that. But this still isn't the place. Clara looked around, realizing for the first time that she had stepped into something bigger than herself. Her eyes flicked to the conference room, the banner, the cake. You did it, she said softly. You're a partner. I nodded. Yes. And today is about celebrating that. She blinked, as if shocked that my life had continued without her in the center of it. Can we talk soon? She asked. Really talk? I hesitated. Then. Saturday. Dinner. My house. 6 o'clock. She exhaled with relief. Thank you. As she left, Nora appeared beside me. She really showed up here? During your promotion party? She did. And you didn't throw her into the punch bowl? Proud of you. Saturday came with cool breezes and soft evening light. I set the table simply but intentionally. Linen napkins, salmon with dill, roasted asparagus. No catered meals, no fine china. Just care and honesty, and a bottle of wine we might actually finish. Clara arrived at 6 sharp, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. Her eyes were less puffy now, but her voice still wavered when she spoke. Hi, Mom. These are for you. I took the flowers, nodded, and invited her in. We sat in the kitchen, not the formal dining room we use during holidays, but the smaller table I'd set by the window during my recent redecorating. This place looks different, Clara said, scanning the room. Lighter. I've been making it mine again. She looked down, fiddling with the rim of her wine glass. I've been thinking a lot, she said, about what I've become, who I've tried to be. And I don't like her. It wasn't a dramatic confession. It was quiet, raw, real. I know I hurt you, she added, deeply. And I'm not here to excuse that. I'm here to ask if we can rebuild. I didn't rush to comfort her. That had been my pattern, rushing in to smooth her guilt, to make it easier for her to keep hurting me. Instead, I said, that depends. On what? On whether you're ready to see me as a person. Not a safety net. Not a wallet. Not a background character in your perfect life. She nodded slowly. I'm trying, she said. I started therapy. I'm reading again. Painting. A little. I realized I don't even know what I like anymore. You're allowed to rediscover that, I said. But not at the cost of others. She nodded again, blinking fast. As we moved to the dinner table, I felt a new calm settle between us. Not the old dependency masquerading as closeness, but something new. Tentative. Fragile. But honest. By the time Sunday arrived, the air in Pine Hollow had shifted. Spring had crept in for good. Trees feathered with pale green, tulips opening in brilliant clusters along Main Street. Inside, I was feeling something similar. A quiet but unmistakable sense of new growth. The dinner with Clara had not been a miracle cure, but it was honest. That mattered more than reconciliation. Honesty, I'd learned, was the only foundation worth building on. We'd begun exchanging texts. Nothing earth-shattering. Just, thinking of you. Good luck at your art class. And, Brandon and I talked about expectations today. Counseling is harder than I thought. That was enough, for now. On Thursday night, I sat in my third painting class at Pine Hollow Creative Arts Center, adding detail to a still life of pears and vintage glass bottles. Caroline leaned over my shoulder. You paint like someone who's remembering, she said. Not learning. I think I am, I replied, surprised by how true that felt. Our group of women, all midlife creatives, rediscovering the selves they'd shelved in marriages and motherhood, had grown close in just a few weeks. After class, we headed to our usual haunt, the lakeside bistro. Over wine and shared desserts, we talked about brushes and color theory, but also ex-husbands, kids we worried about, and dreams we still hadn't dared say aloud. "I want to show my work someday," said Maria, a nurse-turned-painter. "Then do it," Caroline said. "We're not done growing just because we're no longer 35. Laughter rippled through the table. It felt easy. Free. That was when the door opened, and in swept Vivian Caldwell, flanked by two of her usual lacquered companions. She didn't see me at first. But when her eyes landed on me across the room, her face tightened like a mask being pulled into place. She leaned in to whisper to the women beside her, who all turned, too slowly, to look in my direction. The air thickened, tension curling under my skin. I could feel the memory of my old self, the one who might have shrunk, apologized for existing, left quietly. But I didn't leave. I sipped my wine. Maria leaned over and said lightly, "Is that her? The infamous Vivian?" Caroline asked, voice low but firm. "Indeed," I said, lips tight. A few minutes later, Vivian approached. She didn't bother with pleasantries. "What a surprise," she said loudly, her voice laced with sugar and venom. "I thought you'd be home counting the money you saved by ruining my son's wedding." Conversations at nearby tables hushed. I set down my fork. Stood slowly. "This isn't the place, Vivian." "Oh, but you made it the place when you meddled. When you planted ideas in Clara's head about boundaries and self-respect." "She's confused. She's lost, because of you." Before I could respond, Caroline rose beside me. "I don't believe we've met," she said, smile sharp. "I'm Caroline Delaney, interior designer, neighbor to the Richardsons, whom I believe you once offended over wallpaper." Vivian blinked. "And for the record," Caroline continued, "Clara is hardly confused. She's evolving. Which I imagine must be unfamiliar to you." "Excuse me," Vivian started. But now Grace chimed in, cool and crisp like the retired English teacher she was. "This seems awfully classless, Vivian. Making a scene in a restaurant because your son's fiancé had second thoughts about throwing a six-figure spectacle." "You know nothing about our family," Vivian hissed. "Apparently enough to know you just tried to humiliate someone who's done nothing but protect her daughter," Maria said quietly. Vivian's face flushed. She looked at me one last time and said, "You'll regret this." Then she turned on her heel and stormed out. Later, as we lingered over the check, Caroline turned to me. "That was the moment you stopped letting her write your story." "I didn't even say anything," I murmured, stunned. "You didn't need to," she said. "You already said it when you walked in here and stayed seated." The next morning, I received a call from Gregory Caldwell, Brandon's father. "Mrs. Reese," he said in his formal voice, "I believe we should talk." "About what?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "About Clara. About this wedding. And about money." I met him at the Lakeside Bistro at 1:30, arriving deliberately 10 minutes late. He was seated in a corner booth, impeccably dressed, sipping from a glass of mineral water like a man used to commanding rooms. "I'll be brief," he said. "This postponement has created complications. Social ones. Financial ones. I'd like to offer a solution." I waited. "I can help recover the deposit you lost at Westmere Estate." Quietly. "In exchange, I'd ask you to encourage Clara to proceed with the original wedding, perhaps at a smaller scale." I smiled. "No." His brow furrowed. "You haven't heard the full offer." "I don't need to," I said. "You think my support is for sale. That my influence over Clara is leverage. But it's not." He stared at me, unused to being told no. "You're being emotional." "I'm being clear," I replied. "Clara's life is not a transaction. And neither is mine." For the first time, I saw something like respect flicker behind his polished facade. He leaned back. You're not what I expected. I know, I said, standing. But get used to it. That evening, Clara texted. Still on for dinner next weekend? Just us. No pressure. P.S. Brandon told me what you said to his father. Thank you. I smiled. Not because she was grateful, but because she had heard. Really heard. That hadn't always been the case. The morning of the wedding unfolded quietly, wrapped in birdsong and the soft rustle of wind through pine trees. There was no entourage of stylists, no parade of luxury cars, no florists arranging towering displays under silk-draped tents. Just sunlight, a still lake, and the murmurs of loved ones gathering with genuine intention. This time, it felt real. Clara had chosen the new lakeside pavilion at the Pines Resort. Wooden beams, open walls, and rows of simple chairs arranged to let the view do the work. Everything about the day reflected a conscious decision to step away from pretense. There would be no spectacle, no competition, no validation to seek, just a wedding rooted in truth. And this time, I was not just attending. I was part of it. Not hidden, not tolerated. Fully seen. Fully included. 2 nights before, Clara had called me. Her voice had held a tremor I hadn't heard since she was a child, asking me to check under her bed for monsters. Would you help me get ready? She'd asked quietly. In the suite. Just us. There had been silence on the line for a moment. I had taken a breath before answering, letting my heart search for truth instead of reflex. Months ago, she had asked me not to come to her wedding at all. And now she wanted me beside her while she buttoned her dress. I'd be honored, I had said. The bridal suite overlooked the lake. Pale light spilled through wide windows, touching every surface with gold. Clara stood barefoot in front of the mirror, her dress suspended from a wooden hanger by the door. It was not the same dress from the original wedding plan, not the couture gown Diane had insisted on, not the beaded monument to status and legacy. This one was simpler, elegant, unpretentious. It suited her. As I helped her into it, my fingers moving with practiced gentleness over a row of tiny pearl buttons, I was struck by how familiar she still was, even after all these months of space and change. Her shoulder blades, her posture, the tiny freckle just above her left elbow. I remembered holding her when she was feverish at 4 years old, brushing her hair before middle school picture day, zipping up her homecoming dress with a lump in my throat. You nervous? I asked as we stood in silence. She met my eyes in the mirror, her expression open. Not about marrying Brandon, she said. But about doing it like this. Honestly. On our own terms. Without pretending to be someone I'm not. I reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. It's harder, I said. But so much better. The ceremony began just after 3. Clara walked down the aisle to the sound of a cello playing something soft and unassuming. She didn't try to dazzle, she simply walked, holding Brandon's gaze, grounded in the moment. The vows were personal. Their hands trembled slightly as they spoke. I wept quietly, not from sadness, but from the sharp, unexpected joy of being present for something that mattered. Patty leaned toward me and whispered, "You did good, Margot. For both of you." The reception that followed was more a dinner than an event. There was no DJ, no seating chart that needed decoding. Just conversation, laughter, plates passed around by hand. Clara came to sit beside me after the first round of toasts. "I think we got it right this time," she said softly. "You did," I replied. In the weeks that followed, we settled into something new. Not quite effortless, not without its hesitations, but more honest than what had come before. We spoke regularly. Sometimes she called just to share a book recommendation or tell me about a bad day at work. We met for lunch on Saturdays, usually somewhere small and unassuming. Clara asked questions now, about my painting, my growing circle of friends from the co-op, even the coastal cottage I had impulsively purchased after a weekend retreat. It was a new kind of interest. Genuine. Not transactional. One late summer evening, she and Brandon came to the cottage for dinner. Brandon brought wine. Clara carried a pie she'd baked herself. They sat on the deck as the sun went down, listening to the waves roll onto the shore. Clara had brought a sketchbook. Inside were drawings, clumsy, earnest, unfinished, but beautiful in their own right. "I forgot how much I loved this," she said, flipping to a page with a half-finished still life of the vase in her apartment. "I thought being an adult meant you had to stop doing things you enjoyed just because they didn't make money or impress anyone." I smiled at her. "It's easy to forget," I said. "The hard part is remembering what you let go of." We talked until the light faded. Then she asked, "Do you ever regret it? Canceling Westfield? Not funding the wedding?" I thought about that for a while. The money still stung when I looked at certain line items on my retirement plan. But the truth was, I had gained far more than I lost. "No," I said finally. That decision gave me back parts of myself I thought were gone. It was the moment I realized I wasn't here just to fund other people's dreams. It wasn't about punishing you, Clara. It was about saving myself. Clara nodded, her face turned toward the sea. "I think it saved me too. From becoming someone I wouldn't have liked very much." Autumn came, then winter. They settled into married life, uneven, imperfect, but intentional. Diane remained at a distance. Occasionally, I'd hear about a tense phone call or a misunderstanding. But Brandon stood firm. And to my surprise, Gregory reached out to me again, this time with no agenda. We met for coffee at a local cafe, and he spoke of Vivian's slow unraveling of her performative layers, of the damage they'd both caused by insisting that image mattered more than authenticity. "She used to be kind," he said. "But the circles we ran in changed her. And I let it happen." I told him gently that it wasn't too late to start again. That I had done just that. He smiled at me, quiet and respectful. "Brandon's lucky to have you as a mother-in-law," he said. "And Clara's lucky to have had a mother who refused to disappear." 6 months after the wedding, Clara hosted me for dinner at their apartment in New York. It no longer looked like a showroom. The couch didn't match the rug. There were second-hand books stacked in messy piles, prints of emerging artists on the walls, and a mismatched set of plates on the table. It looked like a home. One they had built together, with intention. Over dinner, Clara told me they were expecting their first child. "We haven't told anyone else yet," she said. "But I wanted you to know first." I felt the shift instantly. The circle closing, the next chapter opening. "I'd like to do things differently," she added. "With this child. I want them to know who you are. Not just as their grandmother, but as the woman you are now." It was the kindest gift she could have given me. Life moved forward. Slowly. Authentically. I spent more time at the cottage, painting, writing, hosting long dinners for new friends who become like family. Clara and I talked weekly. Sometimes deeply, sometimes just about recipes or weekend plans. And in those moments, I realized, we were no longer circling the past. We were building something new. Not perfect. Not performative. But real. And that, in the end, was worth everything.